when we're near a radioactive source, we're being exposed to alpha, beta, or gamma. We call this being irradiated. It can be dangerous because nuclear radiation is ionizing. That means it can cause cells to mutate, which can cause cancerous tumours to develop. That means it's important to take some safety precautions when dealing with radioactive material. We should always try to limit the amount of time that we're around a radioactive material to as short as possible. Just means we'll be being irradiated as little as possible. We should also try and stand as far away from it as we can, because the amount of radiation you're receiving falls off with distance. So the further away you are, the less you're being irradiated. But there's another safety concern we need to consider as well, something called contamination. Contamination is the unwanted presence of a material or substance on another material. It basically just means when you get something on you. So if it's bad to spend too much time around radioactive material, imagine how bad it is if you accidentally get some of that radioactive material on you and then end up spending the rest of the day with it right next to you, irradiating you constantly. That's the problem with contamination. There's an analogy that we can use. It's kind of gross, but it's actually very accurate. It's quite a good analogy. I'm going to use the analogy of dog poo. So instead of radioactive material, we've got dog poo. And instead of being irradiated, there's a bad smell. So imagine you're next to a bit of dog poo and it smells bad, but then you leave and you're fine. You can't smell it anymore because you've left. But now imagine that you accidentally step in it. You've become contaminated with that dog poo, and long after you leave the park or the street or wherever the dog poo was, you can still smell that awful smell. The rest of the day, that awful smell is following you around because you have been contaminated. You've got it on you. And that is exactly the problem with radioactive material contaminating you. It just means that that radioactive material then follows you around all day. You get irradiated all day, and that's not good. So what safety measures can we take to avoid contamination? Well, if you ever need to handle radioactive material, it's always important to wear gloves and other protective clothing. In fact, if you need to handle it, it's probably best to wear gloves and to not even handle it directly, but to use tweezers or tongs. So there you go, irradiation, contamination, and radioactive safety in a nutshell.